My name is Vink, an archivist who walks through the cracks of reality. While you're still worrying about your mortgage, your next promotion, or where your next meal is coming from, my job is to track down things that shouldn't exist. Those ghosts that operate outside the laws of physics. The case I'm filing today has a code name, the Hearse Returns Home. This isn't some heartwarming story about going back home. This is a meticulously designed conspiracy. A sacrificial game that uses living people to fill the gaps in a feng shui formation. And I almost became the offering pin to that chessboard. This is a B-level, utterly despairing, terrifying evil ghost. No, to be precise, it's an entire mobile domain of death and silence. The moment you step onto that vehicle, you've already been forcibly removed from humanity's protected list. It all started 3 days ago. I received an anonymous tip. A lead about the serial disappearances on the west side of the city. As a half-baked hacker, I have a bad habit. I like to stick my nose into files I shouldn't be touching. Those missing people had one thing in common. They all received a phone call from the crematorium on the last night before they disappeared. The content of the call was simple. A mechanical female voice. Your relative has completed the cremation procedure. Please come to number 44 Henshan Road before 11:45 tonight to collect the ashes. The problem was, these people's relatives weren't even dead. I submitted this lead to the local police station. And the result? Kid, have you been watching too many horror movies lately? That officer's name was Fat Lee. He'd been working in this area for 20 years. He leaned back in his chair, lit a cigarette, and stared at me with that look you give a lunatic. It's perfectly normal for the crematorium to dial the wrong number. Do you know how many calls those operators handle in a day? Besides, disappearance doesn't equal death. These days, young people running away from home or fleeing from debt, that happens all the time. He flicked his cigarette ash, his tone full of bragging about his powerful social connections. I'm old classmates with the director of the crematorium. That place is managed extremely strictly. How could such a low-level mistake possibly happen? As for you, an unemployed homebody, stop reading all that nonsense about urban legends online. If you have this much time, why don't you go find yourself a proper job? The other officers around him joined in the mockery. Some said I was an internet writer trying to get attention. Others said I had mental problems and needed to see a doctor. This made me furious, so I cursed them out and left the police station directly. But in less than a day, things took another turn. That night at 11:30, my phone rang. The caller ID showed, number 44 Henshan Road Crematorium. I didn't answer. But the phone kept ringing. It rang for a full 10 minutes. When I finally pressed the answer button, what came through the receiver was a mechanical female voice. Mr. Shuenka, your relative has completed the cremation procedure. Please come to number 44 Henshan Road before 11:45 tonight to collect the ashes. Void if overdue. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. I didn't have any deceased relatives. But I knew that if I didn't go, the next one to die might be me. Henshan Road is located on the edge of the city, an area that's been deliberately forgotten. GPS stopped working here. My phone signal was down to 1 bar, and it kept jumping around. The taxi driver was an old man. He dropped me off at the intersection and absolutely refused to go any further. Young man, I've been driving a cab for 30 years, and I never go down this road. If you want to go, walk it yourself. After saying that, he hit the gas and took off, didn't even collect the fare. I stood at the intersection, looking at that pitch-black dirt road ahead. At the end was a bizarre bus stop sign, direct to crematorium. Timetable, midnight 0 hours to 4 in the morning. The moment I stepped onto that road, I felt it. I had left the entire civilized world. There were no streetlights here, no surveillance cameras, no traces of modern society whatsoever. The air was filled with a rotten sweet smell, like something had been fermenting in the soil for a very long time. I pulled out my phone to make a call, but the screen only displayed no service. At this moment, the police, the government, the law, even the FBI, none of them could protect me. After walking for about 10 minutes, I saw the first person. An old lady, carrying a vegetable basket, standing by the roadside. She wore a floral old shirt, her hair was gray, and her face wore a kind smile. "Young man, walking into the mountains so late at night?" Her voice was very gentle, but a layer of goosebumps instantly exploded across my back. Because the frequency of her eyeball movements was wrong. When normal people talk, their eyeballs move slightly with the shift of attention. But her eyeballs, from the moment I appeared, were locked motionlessly on my face. And the angle of her smile was also wrong. A human smile is dynamic, it changes with emotional fluctuations. But the corners of her mouth, as if fixed by something at that arc, were as rigid as a plaster mask. I didn't answer her, but quickened my pace forward. She shouted behind me, "Young man, don't walk so fast, it's very dangerous ahead." Her voice became increasingly shrill, finally turning into a piercing sound like metal scraping. I started running. I could hear footsteps behind me, tap tap tap, but that frequency wasn't human footsteps. It was more like some kind of four-legged animal walking upright on its hind legs, the uncoordinated rhythm produced by dislocated joints. I didn't dare look back. Because I knew that once I looked back, I would see her true form. I sprinted for about 200 meters, and that tap-tap-tap sound finally stopped. I leaned against a dead tree by the roadside, gasping for breath. Just then, I heard the sound of an engine. A low, muffled engine sound coming from the distance. I lifted my head, and saw an old bus slowly approaching. The body was that dark green paint job from the 1980s, the window glass covered with a thick layer of fog. On the LED display at the front of the bus, in dark red letters, it showed, "Number 44 Henshan Road, last bus." I hesitated. This bus appeared too coincidentally. But that thing behind me could catch up at any moment, and the crematorium ahead was still at least 3 kilometers away. I glanced at my watch. 11:38. Only 7 minutes left until void if overdue. I gritted my teeth and stepped onto the bus. The moment the bus door closed behind me, all sound in the world disappeared. Not quiet, but absolute silence. I could see my mouth moving, but couldn't hear any sound. I stomped my feet. The floor should have made a thump-thump sound, but there was nothing. Even the sound of my heartbeat was swallowed by some invisible force. I turned to look at the cabin. There were 9 people sitting in the bus. In the front row was an old lady wearing a floral shirt, holding a vegetable basket in her hand. Her head was lowered, her face couldn't be seen clearly. In the second row sat a middle-aged man in a suit, briefcase on his knees, hands folded properly together. The third row had a young couple, the girl leaning on the boy's shoulder, the two maintaining an intimate posture, but completely motionless. In the corner of the back row, a thin woman was curled up, her face buried in her knees, shoulders trembling slightly. There were a few other passengers scattered throughout the cabin, some looking like students, some elderly people with canes. But they all had one thing in common: no one was talking. No one was moving. They were like dolls with the pause button pressed, maintaining the posture they had when boarding, sitting rigidly in their seats. I could feel that their eyes were all staring at me. Although their heads hadn't turned around, I could sense that malicious gaze, like countless needles stabbing into my back. The driver sat in the driver's seat, his cap brim pulled extremely low, his face couldn't be seen clearly. His hands were clamped tightly on the steering wheel, the backs of his hands covered with dark bluish corpse spots. I walked to the driver's side, tried to speak, but found I couldn't make a sound. The driver slowly raised his head. Under the cap brim was revealed a face without any features. No, it wasn't without features. Rather, all the features had sunk into the skin, leaving only a few shallow indentations. He looked at me, then extended a withered finger, pointing toward an empty seat in the back of the cabin. The meaning was very clear. Sit down, shut up, don't cause trouble, is less than #0. "我井号大鱼." I walked to that empty seat. Just as I was about to sit down, I suddenly noticed a note on the seat. The note was torn from an old newspaper, the edges yellowed, with a few lines written crookedly in ballpoint pen. Don't speak. Don't get off the bus. Don't trust anyone. Each stop lasts no less than 3 minutes, no more than 5 minutes. If it goes overtime, you'll see them boarding the bus. I clutched the note in my palm and slowly sat down. The seat was that old-style hard plastic material, ice-cold and bone-chilling. I could feel that there was a layer of viscous liquid on the surface of the chair, like blood that had congealed for a long time. The bus started. The body shook violently once, then began to move slowly forward. I looked out the window. The scenery outside began to distort. The original wilderness and grave mounds, as if pulled by an invisible force, turned into blurred streaks of light and shadow. And between those streaks of light and shadow, I saw countless faces. Those faces pressed against the windows outside, staring into the bus with hollow eye sockets. Their mouths were opened very wide, as if screaming silently. I realized that this bus was no longer in normal space. It was passing through some kind of gap, a gray zone between reality and death. After about 5 minutes, the bus stopped at the first station. A rusty sign stood at the platform, the writing already blurred, barely legible, "Graveyard Intersection." The bus door opened. No one got on. No one got off. All the passengers still maintained their rigid postures, as if they had no awareness that the bus had stopped. I stared at the bus door, counting the time. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Just at the last second of the 3rd minute, a figure suddenly appeared outside the bus door. It was that old lady carrying the vegetable basket. She stood outside the bus door, her neck twisted at an impossible angle, her face turned toward the inside of the bus. Her mouth opened, revealing densely packed black teeth inside, like some kind of deep-sea fish. The bus door closed. The bus continued forward. I looked down at the note in my hand. Suddenly there was an additional line of text. First stop, someone wanted to board. You refused. Very good. I realized that this note was some kind of real-time updated rule explanation. And the person who wrote these words was observing me. The bus continued driving, but I began to lose track of how long we'd actually been traveling. I glanced at my watch, 11:40. But I clearly remembered that when I got on the bus it was 11:38. At least 10 minutes should have passed by now. But the time on my watch had only advanced 2 minutes. I looked out the window again. The scenery outside was still that crimson chaos, but I suddenly noticed that the hands slapping the windows were increasing. They were stacking up layer upon layer on the windows, like some kind of living wallpaper. And in the gaps between those hands, I saw eyes. Countless eyes, all staring at me. I started to doubt whether I was still on the bus. Maybe I'd already gotten off. Maybe I was lying in some grave pit right now, and all of this was a hallucination before my death. I pinched my thigh hard. It hurt a lot. But could this pain really prove I was still alive? Or do dead people also feel pain? That smile made my blood instantly freeze, because her mouth split open all the way to her ears. She spoke, her voice that kind of mechanically synthesized, emotionless child's voice. Uncle, can you help me find my mommy? She said she's waiting for me at the crematorium, but I've been looking for so long and can't find her. I didn't answer, because I noticed that the rag doll in her hands was also looking at me. The doll's eyes were sewn on with buttons, but those 2 buttons were slowly rotating. The little girl tilted her head and continued, Uncle, why aren't you talking? Is it because you also can't find your family? She reached out her hand, wanting to grab my sleeve. Just as her fingers were about to touch me, my eyes suddenly hurt intensely. That pain was like someone driving a red-hot iron nail from my eye socket deep into my brain. I covered my eyes, bent over, almost crying out. But just then, my vision changed. I saw the future. No, to be precise, a possible future. The images were like a fast-forwarded movie. I reached out and held the little girl's hand. Her smile became even more radiant. Then, the bus door opened at the next stop. The little girl pulled my hand and said, "Uncle, my mommy is right outside. Will you come with me to find her?" I followed her off the bus. Outside the platform was a mass grave, broken tombstones, and exposed white bones everywhere. The little girl let go of my hand, turned around. The smile on her face disappeared. Her body began to swell, her skin split open, and countless pale hands crawled out from inside. Those hands grabbed my limbs and dragged me into the soil. I could feel the dirt pouring into my mouth and nose, my lungs burning, my bones breaking. The last image was my corpse buried in a grave pit, and the little girl standing at the edge of the pit, looking down at me with those pure black eyes. I returned to reality. The little girl's hand was still suspended in midair, only a few centimeters from my sleeve. I jerked backward, dodging her touch. The little girl froze for a moment, the smile on her face stiffening. She stared at me for several seconds, then slowly turned around, walked to the back of the cabin, and sat down. She didn't speak again, but I could feel her malice had become even more intense. I looked down at the note in my hand. Another line had appeared. "Second stop. Someone wanted you to get off. You refused. But she remembers you now." I realized that what I had just seen wasn't a hallucination. It was my ghost eye warning me. It let me see the outcome of death in advance, gave me a chance to choose again. But this ability came with a price. I could feel my eyes burning hot, as if something was burning inside my eye sockets. I wiped with the back of my hand. It was covered with dark red blood. The bus continued forward. Third stop, nameless monument. The bus door opened. This time, a middle-aged man got on. He wore a cheap suit, his hair combed meticulously, a professional fake smile on his face. After boarding, he looked around the cabin, then walked straight to my side, and sat down. He turned his head and said to me in an excessively enthusiastic tone, "Brother, still taking the bus this late? Going to the crematorium on business?" I didn't answer. He didn't mind and continued talking to himself. "I'm also going to the crematorium. My wife died. Cremation tonight. Ah, life is unpredictable." As he spoke, he pulled out a black and white photo from his briefcase and held it in front of me. "Look, this is my wife. Beautiful, right?" I looked down at the photo. In the photo was a young woman wearing a wedding dress, smiling brilliantly. But the edges of the photo had burn marks. And the woman in the photo had no eyes. Not closed eyes, but nothing in the eye sockets, just two black hollow voids. The middle-aged man took back the photo and sighed. "She was burned to death. Our house caught fire that night. I ran out, but she didn't make it in time." He turned his head and stared at me intently. "Tell me, is this my fault?" I still didn't answer, but I noticed his shadow was wrong. The light in the cabin shone down from overhead. Everyone's shadow should be at their feet. But his shadow was on the wall behind him. And the shape of that shadow wasn't human. It was more like some kind of beast on all fours. The middle-aged man suddenly laughed. "Brother, you're not talking. Do you look down on me? Or do you also think it was me who killed my wife?" His voice became increasingly shrill, finally turning into a woman's scream. "Why didn't you save me? Why did you run away alone? Why did you let me burn to death there alone?" He suddenly grabbed my shoulder, his nails piercing into my skin like knives. I could feel something ice-cold drilling into my body along his fingers. Just then, my eyes hurt again. The prophetic dream activated once more. Images fast-forwarded. I was dragged to the back of the cabin by the middle-aged man. His face began to melt, revealing charred bones underneath. His mouth split open, and a burned woman crawled out from inside. The woman's skin was completely carbonized, only two balls of burning flames in her eye sockets. She grabbed my neck and pressed my head into the seat. The seat melted like liquid, swallowing my head. I could feel my face being scorched, skin peeling off layer by layer. Finally, I became the 10th passenger in the cabin, forever sitting in that position, waiting for the next replacement. I suddenly raised my hand and punched the middle-aged man in the face. He froze. All the passengers in the cabin simultaneously turned their heads and stared at me. Is less than #0. 5 hashes greater than. The air solidified. I could feel that my action just now had violated some kind of rule. But I had no choice. If I didn't fight back, I would die. The middle-aged man covered his face and slowly stood up. A crack appeared on his face, extending from his forehead all the way to his chin. Inside the crack, burning firelight was revealed. He opened his mouth and let out a piercing scream. Just then, the driver suddenly hit the brakes. The bus stopped abruptly. All the passengers leaned forward due to inertia. And the middle-aged man crashed directly into the seat in front. His body shattered like glass, instantly turning into a ground full of black fragments. The cabin returned to silence. All the passengers slowly turned their heads back, continuing to maintain their rigid postures. As if nothing had just happened. I looked down at the note in my hand. Another line had appeared. Third stop, someone wanted to kill you. You fought back. The rules allow self-defense. But only once. I realized that there were hidden rules on this bus. As long as I didn't actively violate them, I could survive. But if I defended myself passively, the rules would be on my side. The key was that I needed to know in advance who would attack me. And my ghost eye was precisely for predicting death. The bus continued forward. I glanced at my watch. 11:42. More than 10 minutes left until void if overdue. But I counted. From boarding until now, at least 20 minutes had passed. Time, on this bus, was distorted. I began to deduce. If the time flow on the bus was different from the outside world, then I might never reach the destination. Or rather, when I reached the destination, hours or even days might have passed in the outside world. By then, void if overdue would have long since taken effect. I would become a corpse on the cremation list, forcibly completed into that system. This was a logical death loop. Boarding the bus was to reach the crematorium. But boarding itself meant never arriving. The only way out was to break the rules of this bus. But I didn't even know the full picture of the rules yet. How could I break them? The bus continued forward. But I discovered that the scenery outside the window was starting to repeat. That rusty sign I had just seen appeared again. Then that mass grave. Then that nameless monument. We were going in circles. This bus had fallen into a ghost wall. I looked at my watch. 11:43. Fuck. This could even flow backward. I had to actively break this loop. I stood up and walked to the driver's side. The driver still maintained that rigid posture, hands clamped tightly on the steering wheel. I bent down, trying to see his face clearly. Just as my line of sight touched the shadow under his cap brim, my ghost eye activated again. This time, what I saw wasn't the future, but the past. Images flashed back. This was Henshan Road 30 years ago. A young driver, driving this bus, traveling through the night. 10 passengers sat in the bus. They were all family members going to the crematorium to attend a funeral. But halfway there, the bus lost control. Not mechanical failure, but something invisible forcibly took over the steering wheel. The bus rushed off the road and flipped into the mass grave by the roadside. The body rolled in mid-air, glass shattered, metal twisted. Finally, the bus crashed heavily to the ground and caught fire. 10 passengers, all trapped in the bus, burned alive. The driver couldn't escape either. His body was pierced by the steering wheel, pinned to the driver's seat, slowly carbonizing in the flames. But just at the last moment before he was about to die, he heard a voice. That voice said, "Do you want to live? I can give you a chance. But you must drive this bus forever. Until you find 10 replacements. The driver agreed. And so, he became what he is now. A driver who could never die, trapped on this bus that could never reach its destination. And those passengers on the bus were the replacements he had pulled onto the bus over the past 30 years. They all thought that as long as they rode to the end, they could survive. But the truth was, there was no end. This bus was a mobile tomb. I finally understood. The rule of this bus wasn't to reach the destination. It was to be trapped on the road forever. I should never have gotten on this bus. I should have walked or driven to the crematorium. And now, the only way out was to make the bus stop. Completely stop. I pulled out my phone from my pocket. Although there was no signal, I had downloaded some materials before. Those were talisman patterns I found on a mysterious forum while investigating the disappearance case. At the time, I just thought they were interesting and casually saved them. But now, I was going to take a gamble. I opened the images and found one labeled Guiding Talisman. The pattern was simple, just a few twisted lines forming a shape similar to an eye. I pointed my phone screen at the driver and shouted loudly, "Stop the bus." The driver's body trembled. He slowly turned his head. Under the shadow of his cap brim, 2 balls of burning firelight were revealed. He opened his mouth and let out a low roar. "You cannot make me stop. I haven't found 10 people yet." I gritted my teeth. "You've already found them. Including me, there are exactly 10 people on the bus. Your mission is complete." The driver froze. He slowly lowered his head, counting the passengers in the cabin. 1, 2, 3. When he counted to me, he stopped. He stared at me for a long time, then let out a desperate wail. The bus began to shake violently. The body started to twist, the window glass shattering piece by piece. Those hands that had been slapping the windows frantically poured in, grabbing everything in the cabin. The little girl screamed, her body dragged out of the bus by those hands. The other passengers were also pulled away one by one, disappearing into that crimson chaos. I grabbed the handrail, desperately trying to steady myself. Just then, I saw the exit. In front of the bus door, a white light appeared. That was the entrance to the real world. I didn't hesitate and rushed toward that light. Behind me came the driver's voice. "Thank you for letting me be free." Then, everything disappeared. I crashed heavily onto the ground. Cold, hard, real ground. I opened my eyes and found myself lying in an open space. Around me were several gray-white buildings, blue smoke rising from the chimneys. This was number 44 Henshan Road Crematorium. I had finally arrived. I struggled to stand up and glanced at my watch. 11:59. 1 minute left until void, if overdue. I rushed toward the nearest building and pushed open the door. Inside was a reception hall with slogans on the wall reading, "Civilized funeral services, green and environmental." An old man sat at the front desk. He wore a deep blue Taoist robe, his eyes covered with black cloth, holding a dragon-headed cane in his hand. He looked at me and slowly spoke. "Vink, you're late." I froze. "Who are you?" "My name is Blind Lee. I'm the night watchman here." He paused, the corners of his mouth pulling into a sinister smile. "And the person waiting for you." He picked up a stack of yellow talisman papers from the desk and handed them to me. "Take these, you'll need them in a moment." I took the talisman papers. The moment my fingers touched the paper, a bone-chilling cold shot from my fingertips straight into my brain. The cinnabar characters on the talisman papers seemed alive, slowly writhing. Blind Lee stood up and turned to walk inside. "Follow me. Your real trial is only just beginning."